Hello guys, I am Vitold and I'm here to tell you about 7 reasons for which it's worth to get yourselves BMW S1000XR of the second generation. And let me make it clear, as this is only about the second generation of the S1000XR. The first generation had a very annoying suspension to me that felt as if it was straight from a sports bike. Now the suspension gives a sporty feeling, along with dealing very well with any kinds of bumps and potholes, leaving at the same time your bug and butts at peace. So let's dig into what I prepared for you guys and start off with the fact that S1000XR's performance at higher RPM is out of this world, and it's an absolute top in this class of the motorcycles that the XR is being compared to most often. So Ducati Multistrada, BMW R1250 GS and others which you may be considering, which are taller motorcycles with wide handlebars, larger, usually or pretty much now always adjustable windscreens, upright position and plenty of space for the passenger and luggage. S1000XR has 165 horsepower and 114 Newton meters of torque out of its 999 cubic centimeter 4-cylinder engine. Man, what a power plant that is. If you want to kick supercars' asses on a daily basis while sitting fairly comfortable on a rather soft seat and carrying your wife in the back, here is your motorcycle. However, there's one disclaimer that I need to mention. So in the first sentence I said that the performance is great in the higher RPM, and please take it literally. If you are in the first half of the RPM range, so down low, not much is going on there, and with this behavior it reminds me of two-stroke engines in motocross motorcycles. They also have a weak low end, and at some point they suddenly explode with power. It is not exactly like that in the XR, as there is no specific sudden tipping point. It just accelerates more quickly as you reach higher RPM, which in itself is mind-blowing, as in the first few gears this gives an impression of becoming quicker the faster you go, which is kind of cool. And the bottom line is that if you want to race and feel crazy excitement thanks to a motorcycle's performance, the XR can give you that. Just remember to keep it in the range where it produces all that crazy power, which is high. Torque isn't amazing and the numbers kind of reflect that, so be sure that this way of power delivery suits you. Engine-wise, it basically rides like a sports bike. The second reason is actually connected with that previous sentence, and let me clarify that. What I mean here is that you may get a proper sports bike feel on an XR in terms of how the engine works. If you are into sports bikes, but for some reason cannot, don't want, or just don't think it makes sense to ride one anymore, for example, XR will likely be a really great alternative. If you are already old and don't want to lay on your belly, supporting yourself with your arms, but prefer to actually sit like a human on your butt, then the XR will truly be great. And hey, if you were riding sports bikes your whole life and you simply want to make a transition now, for example, to be able to travel on larger distances, S1000XR probably will be the best thing that you may get that will still kind of stay in the similar style. The third point is a big one, actually a huge one that I actually haven't realized until now. That is that buying S1000XR is one of the best deals ever. And yes, I know how this sounds. The thing is that you pay for one motorcycle, but in fact you get two. One sports bike and one touring motorcycle. And it really can do both things quite well. Some other motorcycles like Ducati Multistrada again, or again BMW R1250 GS are comfortable motorcycles too, and they are quick, while GS is actually turning in an amazing way. It's fantastic, and the Multistrada is matching or actually having more power than the XR. But it's only the XR that can give you a proper feeling of being a sports bike one day, if you use it like one, and another day become a touring motorcycle. It just does that with ease. GS and the Multistrada will always feel like adventure motorcycles, and they are adventure bikes with powerful engines that handle well and are precise. GS actually being the amazing one in terms of eating all the curves at any speed. Let's leave that aside. So with the XR, you have a two-in-one kind of a deal, and I believe that this opens so many additional possibilities. Now in the fourth point, I want to get back to the topic of suspension because it truly deserves to be mentioned here now in the second generation. It is not the most nimble motorcycle, and it feels much heavier at lower speeds than, for example, the big GS, but in terms of riding comfort and isolating our spines, our backs from any kind of road irregularities, it's really good now. The overall experience may be like on a sports bike, like the feel may be like on a sports bike, but riding over a bump is definitely not like a sports bike experience. It's as if the XR just swallows all that and tells you not to worry, which is inspiring. Now the first generation would jump and try to break your spine on the first meter when riding it. So this here is a huge upgrade that finally made this motorcycle worthy and valuable touring motorcycle. Before, I wouldn't want to spend much time on it outside of the city or outside of a racetrack, but now I would definitely not hesitate before taking it for a long trip, except for those super long gears and a weak low end that makes you constantly drop down a few gears when you want to accelerate or overtake anybody. That's a little bit of a downside here, but yeah, the suspension is now as comfortable as I would like it to be without being too soft and without being sloppy at all. Really nice work, and thank you BMW. Now the fifth reason is quite simple, and it may get down to personal preference, but I think that the current second generation of S1000XR, it simply looks great. So there is definitely a clean design with sharp lines. It looks both light and it looks muscular, which I like. Also, now the front end is pretty. So the previous one continued this, let's call it a swollen eye design after a fight in a bar that BMW now drops with the S series. And I feel it was cool in the S1000 single R, so the naked bike with the similar engine, actually the same engine. But in the XR, I always thought that perhaps that was a little bit too silly and maybe even not exactly appropriate for this kind of motorcycle. And now that's gone. And I feel that this is the best. Let me say that again, I feel that this is now the best looking motorcycle out of them all in the whole segment. So give it a thumb up if you also agree. Still, this is personal, but I don't think that I've ever heard anybody complain about this new design. And it gets even better if you give it an aftermarket exhaust, which kind of leads us to the sixth point at the same time. Because look, this is one of very few motorcycles with an inline 4-cylinder engine in the segment of motorcycles that may be considered proper tourers. If you would want something that you sit upright on and that has a 4-cylinder and inline engine, your options would otherwise be quite limited to fat motorcycles like Yamaha FJR 1300 or Kawasaki GTR 1400, also known as the Concours in the US, and perhaps maybe even a Kawasaki Versus or Yamaha Tracer 900, the Versus 1000. But both of these bikes have below 120 horsepower, so at the peak performance, at their maximum, they cannot come close to the XR, to the big XR. Now give the big XR a proper exhaust and you get yourself an awesome 4-cylinder beast here that's sounding great. And there is really not much competition here. And I think I would agree with the statement that XR is in a class of its own. And that could be a very strong reason to get it if it also ticks all of your other boxes. Now the seventh and the last reason that I wanted to tell you guys about is that since it is at the same time being kind of out of the place, it is original. So in the end, you may be feeling like you're original too riding an XR, because you would be in fact. There are high chances of not meeting any other S1000XR on the street while constantly passing GS's, Multistradas, Tigers and some other motorcycles. And it's not original in a way like Harley Davidson Pan America is, so by being sort of an extreme, because that one is just extremely ugly. But this XR is more like Lamborghini Urus alongside all BMW X5s and Porsche's Cayenne. It makes an impression that is generally positive and exotic and very hard to replicate on the market now. It appears that BMW have put a lot of market research into S1000XR, and somehow they still decided to make it work and sell it, to make it a reality, in other words. And let's not forget that the engine that you're having in an XR is coming from BMW's crazy superbike, the S1000RR. So they took that thing, slightly changed its behavior, and they put it into something that looks like a prettier GS with more fairings. And now you may get one yourself. I think it is a very cool idea, and I hope that you see where I'm coming from with the idea of this Lamborghini Urus comparison. Because look, Volkswagen also took their Touareg / Q7, Audi Q7, Q8, Porsche Cayenne and Bentley Bentayga, and they put an engine from another Lamborghini in there, and they put a sticker of a Lamborghini because it's technically a Lamborghini there. And that's the same kind of process that S1000XR has undergone, and it is very original in the same way. So if you don't feel like following the crowd here, then I would say you might really want to consider S1000XR. It's not perfect, but it's definitely something else. And so there are all the reasons for getting the S1000XR that I came up with. If you have or had your own reasons, please do share them with us in the comments. And I also made a video for you guys listing all the reasons for which you may want to actually avoid S1000XR, if those points should affect you. So make sure that you see that video too. For most of you, it's already available, and the link is already in the description. For some of you, you gotta wait a week or so. So check it out to make sure that you get the full view on the matter. And that's it from me. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.